Okay, I'm just gonna briefly go over this diagram, the diagram of market failure, just because one or two of you guys did message me and you asked me to, make a video of this, which I understand it's kind of tricky to grasp. But then again, guys, that's what I say all the time. If there's something that you do not understand and that you are a bit confused about, then please feel free to message me, and I'm more than happy to do this. Anyway, so market failure basically means that when businesses take into account the cost that are incurred by consumers and by businesses or by producers themselves, which is fine, but they don't take into account the social cost. And the social cost in this case, we particularly mean by environmental cost for businesses nowadays. So we all have heard stories of businesses, let's say in China and India, all of that, how there's massive air pollution, there's water pollution. All of that is basically because of all the dirt that comes out of industries and factories, and businesses cannot be bothered at all unless the government puts taxes or whatever it is, but that's a different picture. That's because they have to do it, right? And that's what the diagram of market failure is trying to explain to us, right? And again, it's an important concept, but it's something that's actually repeated again in year 12. The exact same thing is repeated again. So it's not something that I'm very picky about right now, but again, it's best if you do understand this. Um, this is a definition that I've actually gotten from the year 12 textbook, because your textbook doesn't explain this very well, which is why I assume a couple of you had difficulty understanding this. But let's see. So we've got the private cost and we've got social cost. The private cost is the cost incurred by the business itself, right? What is the cost of the business of producing a particular product? Social cost is what is the cost done socially on people, on the environment, by businesses producing a particular product. So for instance, let's say producing calculators. The cost of the business to produce this calculator might be $10, but the social cost or the cost of producing this and the dirt that they're throwing in the rivers or whatever it is, the social cost of this can be a lot higher. That can be, let's say, $20. So just to produce one calculator, which is only $10 for you, the actual cost for the whole economy or for the whole world is actually $20. And here we need to learn how to differentiate between the two, right? So private cost has PM and QM. PM is the market price. So what is the market price of that cost? So how much are you selling it for? And the market quantity, the quantity that you have produced, right? Considering the cost that was spent on it. That's it. Then, however, social cost is the socially optimal price, and the QS is the socially optimal quantity. Now we're going to try and understand what that actually means. Now, over here it says that the market will only take into account private costs. That's what we've spoken about. Businesses only take into account the private cost, which is their own cost. They don't take into account the cost or the suffering that they're causing to other people. They only just, remember, greediness. Businesses are greedy. That's what they want, right? Not all of them, again, obviously, but the main aim of a business is to make money. So the market would only take into account private costs and benefits of production, resulting in a price which is PM, and the quantity and the output level, which is QM. So we've got PM here and we've got QM here that we just discussed. Then we've got if the negative externality, and by the way, the negative externality is the negative impact. Okay, so what is the negative impact of producing this pen? So again, the negative externality is in for producing this pen could be, let's say, waste of plastic. It's a plastic pen. So the waste of plastic is actually the negative externality, because that wasted plastic you're going out and you're dumping in the forest, or you're going out and you're dumping into the streets or whatever it is. That would be the negative externality. So here it says that the negative externality were borne by either the producer or the consumer. However, the price would rise to PS. The price would move from PM, which is the market price, to the socially optimal price. So if you actually considered the fact that you are destroying the environment, or you're doing something bad by producing that particular product, your price will actually increase. And I'll just come to that in a bit. A PS reflecting the higher cost of production. Output would fall to QS, which is a socially optimal quantity, highlighting that goods and services with negative externalities tend to be overproduced. Now, there are two main things to keep in mind over here. Majority of the times, the businesses do have alternatives. To produce this pen, they don't always necessarily have to use plastic. They can use anything else, anything that is recycled, or really just anything else that does not have such a bad impact on the environment. And if you do use that, then your price will actually be more. That's not going to be PM. Your price is going to be PS. And the reason for that is because if you are using, let's say, environmentally friendly products that are always more expensive. How many times have we actually gone into the supermarket and tried buying, you know, really healthy stuff? Or really just really recycled paper. Recycled paper is actually more expensive than regular paper. Or recycled plastic bags or recycled bags are more expensive than normal plastic bags. And the main reason for that is because it's a lot more harder to produce that. It's a lot more work to produce that, which is why the price is going to be higher as well for this. Right? So the price moves from PM to PS just because it's more expensive for them to produce something if they keep in mind the social cost. If they keep in mind the fact that to produce a normal plastic pen, it's going to be good for their private cost because that's cheaper, but it's going to be bad for the society. So let's just consider the social cost. And if they do consider the social cost, they're going to move to PS because the price actually does increase, right? At the same time, the quantity supplied, or the QS, which is the socially optimum quantity, also decreases from QM to QS. And the main reason for that is because if you do not care about the environment, or if you do not care about what your production is doing to everything around you, you can actually produce more. You can produce as much as you can or as much as you want because you don't care. But if you do start caring, you'll have to pay more. At the same time, you cannot produce as much as you could before, just because if you produce more than this, if you go above this, or if you go after this, you will have, that's going to have a bad effect on the environment. So this bit over here basically just means that this is not possible, but the businesses still do it. It's not possible for you to produce more than this, because if you do, that's bad. That's going to have a negative effect. That's a negative externality. That's going to have a negative effect, let's say, on the environment, because then you're abusing the natural resource. Let's say farmers, right? The farmers can only produce up until this black point over here. If they produce more than this, they can actually use the field to produce more. That's fine. But you're actually overusing the field. You can use the field, you can grow more crops or whatever it is, but in reality your crops won't be as good, or the field's just going to die, because that's not possible for it to do. You're abusing it. You're making it produce a lot more than it actually can, right? That is why the quantity also decreases, because you can't produce more than this quantity. And the price also increases because in order for you to actually care about the cost that your business is incurring to everything around you, the price has to increase, right? And again, I've explained this in a very, very concise manner, and the main reason for that is because this is a concept that we talk about in a lot more detail in year 12. In year 12, there's a whole chapter called environmental stability, right? So it's something that's going to be discussed there, but this is, again, I still want you guys to briefly understand this, right? Just know that after the black dot point over here, you cannot produce more. Just because if you do, you're abusing it, you're causing more social cost. You're not considering the social cost. And if you do consider the social cost, then the price is going to increase as well. That's all you need to know. Okay? I want you guys to pause the video and draw this. Also pause the video and write this down as well, please. Again, we've got price ceilings and price floors. I haven't had anyone tell me that they don't understand this, but I'm just going to very briefly go over it. So price ceiling is the maximum price that can be charged. So sometimes the government comes up and it says, well, you can't charge more than $10 for this pen, or for any pen in Australia. If you do, then you'll have to pay a fine to us for whatever reason, right? Let's say the reason could be an essential product. Let's say water. right? So you can't charge more than $10 for a water bottle that you get outside, because it's an essential product or it's an important product. The same thing with milk. You can't charge more than $5 for milk, right? Just because it's something that people need. And that is why that can happen. And again, price ceiling, yes. So you have the diagram for price ceiling over here. This is important. This comes in year 12 as well, so I want you guys to know this. Please draw this in your books, okay? Again, you can have the demand and supply meet over here, which is at high price, so the people will be willing to pay for milk at a high price, but you're not going to do that because you're not allowed to. The government's going to say that the maximum that you can charge for milk is 5. You can't charge for milk $10, which is here. People are willing to pay $10, but you still can't charge them more just because the government doesn't want to. It's an important product, it is a need, and the government doesn't want you to charge, and which makes sense. That's great, right? This is how government intervenes in the price. On the other hand, price floor is the minimum price that can be charged for a particular commodity. So that's the minimum that you can charge. So let's say over here, the minimum that you can charge is a lot above than what people are willing to pay. People are willing to pay only PE, but you are actually charging them a lot more. Maybe because it's a scarce product. It's a product that is not available a lot in Australia. And that's when the government comes and says, well, it's very scarce. It's very, very, it's not available everywhere. So I want you to charge a higher price for that. So that not a lot of people are able to buy it. And that is the diagram for price floor. Again, I want you guys to pause and draw this if you haven't already. So you've got negative and positive and externality, right? Goods, public goods. We're going to, again, very briefly talk about the different kinds of market structures. So we've got pure competition. Pure competition is what we've been talking about so far, or what you do in business studies. Pure competition is basically and mainly when you have different businesses competing with each other. Different regular businesses, right? So here it says there are many small buyers, and none of them are sufficiently large enough to be able to affect the market price. For instance, bulk buying by arranging bulk demand. So for instance, you just have regular businesses who are just selling their products and who are just competing regularly. Let's just talk about very small supermarkets that you see, or let's say very small businesses. It could be small schools, it could be small, just whatever it is. And again, so that would be considered pure competition, to be honest. So the product sold by all firms are homogeneous. That basically means that all firms sell the same products. So again, let's talk about shoes. So you have different brands of shoes. They're all selling the same product at a very, very similar price, and they're very small brands as well. Buyers and sellers all know that the product is the same, and they also know that the prices on which that they're able to sell their product has to be the same as well. Because let's say, so you have shoes, and all of them are selling boots, and they're selling boots for $100 each. And if they sell lower than that, then that's going to be a loss for them. If they sell more than $100, that's going to lead to their sales going down because people don't want to buy it. Remember the example of apple that we did in class once? If I go into a food market and if I see apples for exactly the same price, I wouldn't know which one to buy because I haven't tasted them yet, right? And that would be pure competition because you have the exact same product, the exact same price. No, and that's just how people are competing. The only way that they can compete better is by marketing more. Okay? So then we've got monopoly. Monopoly is basically when you just have one particular firm selling the product. So everyone relies on that particular firm. And a lot of times in Australia, monopoly is basically done by government. The government manages monopoly because they don't want other businesses to abuse the market. I'm assuming you also know this. So we've just got two more. We've got monopolistic. Yep, we've got monopolistic competition. Now, there's a very, very slight difference between monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Okay, so monopolistic competition is basically when there are a large number of relatively small firms. So you have relatively small firms and there are many of them. Okay, just keep that in mind. Oligopoly is when there are only a few relatively large firms. That's the only difference. Monopolistic competition is when you have many small firms. oligopoly is when you have a few large firms, and we'll actually come to these. Okay, we'll understand what they are. So monopolistic competition, the products sold in the market are very similar, but they're not identical. For instance, water. So you've got water, you've got juice, you've got Pepsi, you've got all the others. So let's say drinking products, or let's say restaurants as well. Different restaurants are all selling food. They're not exactly the same, but they're all selling food. Okay, so the firms engage in product differentiation. They package and present their products so that they can appear different. By competition, again, they market themselves however they can. The fact that the products are differentiated gives firms some degree of price setting, of course. There are small barriers to entry for new firms entering the market, including the fact that existing firms have loyal customers. All this is saying is that you have many small firms. So let's imagine that many small restaurants who are selling food. They're all selling food, but they all have different kinds of food, different cuisines, different tastes, and all of that. There are few barriers to entry for different firms. So, for instance, after that, if I wanted to open up a restaurant, I easily could. There's no problem with that. The only problem that I would have would just be the fact that there are too many restaurants already. So the only way that I can attract consumers to myself is through marketing. That's it. So that's monopolistic competition. So you have many, many small firms that compete with each other that have identical products. Per competition could be identical product, it could be same product, it could be completely different product. Doesn't matter. Okay, monopoly is just business selling one product, or one business selling that product. Monopolistic competition is small firms and many of them, and selling similar product. Oligopoly is when there are very few large firms that are kind of selling the same product, but they're kind of different as well. Okay, so they sell similar but differentiated products. Very, very similar to monopolistic competition. However, the only difference here is that monopolistic competition has small firms. Oligopoly has monopolistic competition has large small firms, many small firms. Oligopoly has few large firms. Okay, there are significant barriers to entry, so there are many, many barriers to entry, and this generally accounts for the fact that there are only a few firms in the industry, so it's very hard for you to get into a monopoly, into an oligopoly. Okay, very good examples of oligopolies are Woolies and Coles. So for instance, if I want to open up another supermarket similar to Woolies and Coles, I really don't think that would be a good idea for me to do that in Australia, just because we've got Woolies, we've got Coles, we've got Aldi, we've got many other big supermarkets which have massively dominated the market. And for me to open up another one in this environment is just not a good idea, because I don't think it would work well. These firms have massively taken up the market. So that is why there are significant barriers to entry. It's very hard for you to do that. You can, that's fine, you can try, but you probably won't succeed. Okay? This is, again, if I were you, I would actually just write this down. This is going to help you remember. Pure competition is a theoretical model of perfect competition. We've discussed that. Monopolistic competition, many small firms in the industry. Oligopoly is a small number of large firms in the industry, and monopoly is only one producer in the industry. This is basically summarizing everything that we've done. I need you guys to write this down, please. And I think that is it. That's it with this chapter. We're actually officially done. If you guys do have any other questions, please do feel free to ask me.